The university auditorium was buzzing, every seat filled with students. The air crackled with nervous energy. On stage, under the bright lights, stood two figures at opposing podiums. JUNGKOOK adjusted his microphone, a confident smirk playing on his lips as he looked across at his opponent. Your argument about subsidized housing policy lacks empirical data, Kong. Again. His voice was smooth, clear, and carried a familiar, challenging edge. Kong Y/N gripped her note cards a little tighter, but her voice didn't waver. My data comes from 6 months of field research in the Mapo district, John. Not just textbook theories. I'm talking about real people's lives, real struggles your statistics don't show. The audience murmured. JUNGKOOK leaned into his mic, his eyes locked on hers. Sentiment doesn't win debates, he stated coolly. Facts do. And your facts are based on a sample size of 50. Statistically insignificant. The back and forth was electric. They were the top 2 students in the economics department, and this final round was the stuff of campus legend. When the judges finally tallied the scores, the head professor stepped forward. By a margin of 2 points, the professor announced, the winner of this year's championship is JUNGKOOK. The crowd erupted in applause. JUNGKOOK's team rushed the stage. He accepted the small trophy, his smirk returning full force as he glanced at Y/N. She was clapping politely, her expression stiff. As the winners began to disperse, Y/N approached him. Congratulations, she said, her tone formal. She extended her hand for a brief, professional shake. As she reached out, the cuff of her blouse slid back slightly. There on her wrist was a fading yellow and purple bruise, stark against her skin. JUNGKOOK's smirk vanished instantly. His eyes snapped from the bruise to her face. She followed his gaze, yanked her hand back, and quickly pulled her sleeve down. Thanks, he managed to say, but his voice had lost its triumphant ring. He watched as she turned and quickly walked away, disappearing into the crowd without looking back. The main library was a tomb of silence at 10 p.m. In the deep economics section, only one desk lamp glowed. Y/N was buried in a massive textbook, highlighting lines with furious concentration. A shadow fell over her page. She jumped, her pen skidding across the paper. JUNGKOOK stood there, holding out a simple brown wallet. You left this in the auditorium, he said, his voice quieter than usual in the silent space. Y/N's guard went up immediately. She didn't take it. What do you want? Here to gloat some more. JUNGKOOK didn't rise to the bait. He placed the wallet on the edge of her desk. And for the record, he added, shoving his hands in his pockets, your field research argument was actually solid. The judges prefer quantitative data, but your qualitative approach had merit. Y/N was too surprised to hide it. She slowly picked up her wallet. Why didn't you say that up there? During the cross-examination. He shrugged, looking away at the shelves of books. A rival's job is to challenge, not compliment. It makes you stronger. His eyes drifted back to her as she tucked the wallet into her overstuffed bag. She winced, a sharp, quick intake of breath as the strap pressed against her shoulder. You okay? He asked, his brow furrowing. Y/N instantly straightened up, pulling the sleeve of her sweater down over her wrist with a sharp tug. Fine, she said too quickly. Just tired. Long day. She began shoving her books into her bag, signaling the conversation was over. JUNGKOOK didn't move. You always say that. Say what? That you're tired. He watched her, his analytical mind working. You're always either in class, at the campus cafe, or here. When do you not have a long day? Y/N slung her bag over her shoulder, the weight making her list slightly. That's none of your business, John. Good night. Later that night, in JUNGKOOK's dorm room, his roommate Park Jimin was playing a video game. JUNGKOOK wasn't. He was staring at his laptop screen, his debate trophy ignored on his desk. You've been weird since the debate, Jimin said, not taking his eyes off the screen. You won. You should be celebrating. Unless you like her or something. JUNGKOOK ignored the question. She always wears long sleeves, he said, thinking out loud. Even in early September when it was still hot. Cardigans, sweaters. And today during the handshake, I saw a bruise. Jimin paused his game. A bruise? So, Maybe she plays a sport. Or is clumsy. She flinches. Jungkook continued as if Jimin hadn't spoken. If someone moves too fast near her. I dropped a book next to her in the library last week and she jumped a mile. Like she was expecting to be hit. Maybe she's just shy? Or has skin issues she's covering up? Jimin suggested, though he was starting to look concerned. Jungkook turned his laptop around. On the screen was a meticulous digital calendar. I checked her public class schedule. Cross-referenced it with the campus job boards. She has 8 a.m. classes every day. She works the morning shift at the Beanery Cafe until 2 p.m. She's at the library help desk from 3 to 6. Then she does peer tutoring in the learning center until 9 p.m. He looked at Jimin. Every single weekday. Who does that unless they're avoiding home? Jimin whistled low. Okay, that's a lot of data for just a rival. It's observation, Jungkook said defensively, snapping the laptop shut. But he couldn't shut down the uneasy feeling in his gut. A few days later, Y/N was cutting through the main courtyard, head down, trying to make it to her library shift on time. A group of 3 older frat guys, loud and boisterous, fanned out, unintentionally blocking her path. Hey, it's the debate girl. One of them, Min-jae, said with a grin. Why so serious all the time? You should smile more. Y/N tried to step around them. Excuse me. Another guy, Daeho, reached out and casually grabbed the strap of her backpack, pulling her to a gentle halt. Whoa, slow down. We're just being friendly. A familiar cold voice cut through the courtyard chatter. She said, excuse me. Everyone turned. Jungkook was standing a few feet away, his expression hard. He had clearly been on his way to the gym, judging by his duffel bag. Min-jae laughed. What's it to you, John? She your girlfriend or something? Jungkook walked forward until he was standing squarely between Y/N and the guys. He didn't answer the question. We have a group project, he said, his tone leaving no room for argument. And she's the only one who actually does the work. So I need her focused. Now move. There was a tense silence. Jungkook was known on campus not just for his grades but because he was on the boxing team. He didn't look away. Finally, Min-jae shrugged, the grin fading. Whatever, man. Just trying to have fun. The group wandered off. Y/N let out a breath she didn't know she was holding. She turned to Jungkook. We don't have a group project. He looked at her, the intensity in his eyes softening just a fraction. We do now, he said. He hoisted his duffel bag. Meet me in study room B at 7 p.m. We'll start on the midterm economic analysis for Professor Choi's class. Y/N blinked. That's not for 3 weeks. Exactly, Jungkook said, already walking backward toward the gym, a ghost of his old smirk returning. Gives us time to do it right. Don't be late, rival. He turned and walked away, leaving Y/N standing in the courtyard, confused, relieved, and for the first time, wondering what game her infuriating rival was really playing. At exactly 7 p.m., Y/N walked into study room B. She stopped short. The large table was covered, not just with a couple of textbooks, but with printed articles, 3 different colored highlighters, a laptop, a tablet, and a whiteboard already covered in Jungkook's sharp handwriting. This is excessive even for you, Y/N said, dropping her bag by the door. What's this really about? Jungkook looked up from organizing a stack of graphs. He had a serious businesslike expression. You need a legitimate, documented excuse to be out of your house late. I need to maintain my GPA. This, he gestured at the mountain of work, is a mutually beneficial arrangement. Y/N sighed, pulling out a chair. She knew he was right. The excuse of a major project gave her a reason to text her parents she'd be working at the library until midnight. Fine, she conceded. But I'm doing the data analysis. Your charts, she pointed to one on his laptop, are visually messy. The correlation isn't clear. A flicker of a smile touched Jungkook's lips. Always the critic. Fine. Charts are yours. He slid his laptop toward her. As she reached across the table to pull it closer, the wide sleeve of her sweater rode up past her elbow. Jungkook's breath caught. These weren't the faint, fading marks from the debate. These were darker, angrier. A deep purple bruise wrapped around her forearm, and above it, the distinct lined red imprint of what looked like a belt. Y/N followed his horrified gaze and yanked her sleeve down so violently she almost knocked over a cup of pencils. The room went painfully quiet. Y/N. Jungkook's voice was soft, but it trembled with a barely controlled emotion. Who did that? Her face, pale a moment before, flushed with a mix of shame and anger. None of your business, she snapped, her voice like cracked ice. It is my business, he insisted, leaning forward. You're my project partner. If you're injured, it affects your work. If someone is hurting you, it doesn't affect my work, she interrupted, standing up so fast her chair screeched. My work is perfect. My grades are perfect. That's all that matters here. Are we doing this project or not? They stared at each other across the academic battlefield. Jungkook saw the fear beneath her defiance, the plea in her eyes to just drop it. Slowly he leaned back. He picked up a highlighter. Page 42, he said, his voice returning to a neutral tone. The case study on post-war economic models. Start there. A few nights later, Jungkook's phone buzzed violently on his nightstand at 1:07 a.m. Jimin snorted in his sleep across the room. Blinking, Jungkook saw the name on the screen. Kong Y/N. His heart jumped into his throat. He answered immediately. Hello. Her voice was a thin, shaky whisper on the other end. John, it's me. About the project. Can we meet tomorrow instead? At the 24-hour cafe off campus. Jungkook was already swinging his legs out of bed, reaching for his jeans. Where are you right now? He asked, keeping his voice low but urgent. It doesn't matter, she whispered. He could hear the faint sound of traffic in the background. I can't go home tonight. I'll just work at the cafe. Stay where you are, Jungkook said, shoving his feet into his shoes and grabbing a hoodie. Text me the location. I'm coming to get you. Why would you? Her voice broke. It's the middle of the night. Because we're rivals, he said, his voice firm as he slipped out of the dorm room into the quiet hallway. And I can't beat you if you're sleep-deprived and freezing on a park bench somewhere. Location. Now. There was a long pause, then a soft beep. A text came through with an address for a small playground 10 blocks away. I'm on my way, he said. Don't move. He found her huddled on a bench under a broken street lamp, her arms wrapped tightly around herself. She looked smaller than he'd ever seen her. Wordlessly, he walked over and held out a large steaming cup of hot chocolate from the all-night convenience store. She looked up, startled, then took it with trembling hands. Thanks. He sat down beside her, leaving a careful foot of space between them. They sat in silence for a minute, the only sound her sipping the hot drink. My father, she finally said, her voice hollow. She wasn't looking at him, but at the dark swings swaying in the wind. He doesn't like that I go to university. Thinks it's a waste for a daughter. Says I'm becoming arrogant. My mother just watches. Sometimes she cries, but she never says anything. Jungkook's hands clenched into fists inside his hoodie pocket. How long? He asked, his voice gravelly. Since I got the full-ride scholarship letter, she said, a bitter smile touching her lips. He ripped it up. Said I was needed at the family grocery store full-time. When I enrolled anyway, she trailed off, lifting one shoulder in a slight shrug. That's when the lessons started. Y/N, you have to report this, Jungkook said, turning to face her. To the police, to the university. No. The word was a sharp, panicked cry. She shook her head violently. No. If I do that, it becomes a whole thing. Child services, court, foster care. I'd be pulled out of school. This scholarship is my only way out. My only chance at a real life. I just need to survive 2 more years. I can do 2 years. You shouldn't have to survive, he argued, his heart breaking at her resigned tone. But I do, she said simply, finally meeting his eyes. In the dim light, they were full of a weary determination he'd never seen before. So please, don't help me by telling anyone. That would ruin me. Back in the dorm, Jimin was wide awake, having heard Jungkook leave. He listened, his face growing pale with horror, as Jungkook recounted everything in a furious, hushed whisper. She's not safe there, Jungkook finished, pacing the small room. Not for one more night. Okay, Jimin said, running a hand through his hair. This is heavy. But what can we do? You have to call the police, man. She said no. Jungkook stopped pacing. If we go over her head, she'll lose all trust. And she might actually lose her scholarship if she gets taken away. There has to be another way. Like what? Jimin asked, throwing his hands up. You can't exactly move her in here. The dorm rules her parents. Jungkook stopped. His eyes traveled slowly across the room, past his own neatly made bed to the second bed. It had been empty since his old roommate dropped out last month. The university hadn't assigned anyone new yet. A wild, impossible plan began to form in his mind. Jimin followed his gaze. Understanding dawned on his face. Oh no. No way. Jungkook, you can't be serious. Actually, Jungkook said, a new, determined focus sharpening his features. He looked at the empty bed, then back at Jimin. What if we could? The large lecture hall was silent except for the furious scratching of pens and the flipping of exam pages. Y/N was halfway through her macroeconomics midterm when her smartwatch lit up on her wrist. A text preview flashed. Come home now. She flinched, her pen smudging. She tried to focus on the essay question about fiscal policy. Another buzz. Another preview. Don't ignore me. Her breathing grew shallow. She could feel her heart hammering against her ribs. Third buzz. This one made her blood run cold. You're dead. A small choke sound escaped her lips. Her hands began to shake so badly she could no longer hold her pen. It clattered onto the desk. Tears of pure panic blurred the questions on the page. He's never texted like this before. From 3 rows over, Jungkook watched. He had just finished his own exam. He saw her head drop, saw her shoulders tremble. He saw the way she stared at her wrist like it was a venomous snake. Without another second of hesitation, Jungkook stood up. He walked to the front of the room, placed his completed exam on the professor's desk and leaned in. Professor Kim, he whispered urgently. Medical emergency. I need to help someone. Right now. The professor, an older woman, followed his gaze to Y/N's hunched form. She gave a quick, concerned nod. Jungkook strode to Y/N's desk. He gently but firmly took her half-finished exam paper, placed it on top of his, then put a hand under her elbow. Come on, he murmured, pulling her to her feet. She was limp with shock, unable to resist. He guided her up the aisle. She's unwell, Jungkook announced to the professor, his voice carrying a convincing note of worry. I'm taking her to the campus clinic. Once they were in the empty, echoing hallway, the heavy door shut behind them. Y/N seemed to snap back to herself. She pulled her arm away. What are you doing? My exam? Forget the exam, Jungkook said, his voice low and serious. He looked her straight in the eye. We're going to your place. Right now. You're getting your things. Tonight. This ends tonight. 20 minutes later, they stood in front of a modest, well-kept house in a quiet neighborhood. Every light was on, blazing angrily into the night. Y/N's father yanked the door open before they even reached the porch. His face was red with fury. Where have you been? Your shift at the store ended hours ago. His eyes landed on Jungkook. And who is this? Y/N opened her mouth but no sound came out. Jungkook stepped forward, putting himself slightly in front of her. He summoned every ounce of the cool, arrogant confidence he used in debates. Professor Lee sent us, sir. There's an emergency, all-night study session for the scholarship students. A major assignment was moved up. Y/N needs her textbooks and her laptop. Her father's eyes narrowed with suspicion. At this hour? On a weeknight? No. She has work at the store tomorrow morning. She needs her sleep. Jungkook didn't blink. His voice dropped, taking on a cold, factual tone. Sir, with all due respect, if she misses this mandatory session, she will be placed on academic probation and will lose her full-ride scholarship. He paused, letting the threat sink in. If she loses her scholarship, she'll be home permanently. To work at the store full-time. Is that what you want? The man hesitated. The logic was twisted, but it played directly into what he wanted, control, and her eventual full-time labor. The idea of her losing her fancy ideas, because of a university rule, was appealing. The idea of her being home for good was even more so. He scowled but stepped aside with a grunt. Be quick. Y/N's room was small and painfully neat. As soon as the door closed, she moved like a whirlwind, pulling a small duffel bag from under her bed and frantically stuffing in clothes, a few books, her passport, and a framed photo of her grandmother. He'll come check, she whispered, her movements frantic. He always does. He'll stand outside the door and listen. JUNGKOOK went to the window and peered out. A sturdy-looking oak tree branch brushed against the side of the house. Is that branch strong? Why, yes, Y/N said, following his gaze. But, good. He snatched the now full duffel bag from her hands, unlatched the window and tossed it out. It landed with a soft thud in the bushes below. Climb down. I'll meet you out front with the rest. She stared at him, fear etched on her face. What about you? JUNGKOOK gave her a grin, the old rival smirk she hadn't seen in weeks. It was full of daring. I'll use the door. More dramatic. Just as Y/N swung her leg over the windowsill, a heavy fist pounded on the bedroom door. What's taking so long? The door handle jiggled. It was locked. Just a second. JUNGKOOK called out, his voice perfectly calm. He gave Y/N an urgent nod. Go. She slipped out onto the branch and began to shimmy down. The pounding turned into a furious shake. Open this door. JUNGKOOK took a deep breath, unlocked the door, and opened it just as Y/N's father was about to shoulder charge it. The man stumbled into the room. He looked past JUNGKOOK. The empty bed. The open window. The missing bag. His face transformed into a mask of pure rage. Where is she? JUNGKOOK casually positioned himself between the man and the window. She went on ahead to the library. Wanted to get a good seat. He started backing toward the hallway door. I was just getting some air. You know, before our all-nighter. He reached the doorway. I'll tell her you said goodbye. As her father lunged forward with a roar, JUNGKOOK slammed the bedroom door shut and sprinted down the hall, out the front door, and into the liberating darkness of the night. At 3 a.m. in JUNGKOOK's dorm room, Y/N sat on the edge of the spare bed, still trembling. The adrenaline was fading, leaving cold terror in its wake. He'll come looking for me, she whispered, staring at the floor. He knows I go to Seoul. He'll find me. JUNGKOOK knelt in front of her, holding out a soft, gray sweatshirt with the university logo. Here. He doesn't know where you live now. This is your address. And starting tomorrow, he said firmly, you'll have a new phone with a new number. We'll go to the dean of students first thing. We'll get you a formal housing exemption due to unsafe living conditions. We'll do it quietly but properly. The door opened and Jimin entered, carefully carrying 3 mugs of tea. His usual playful smile was gone, replaced by gentle seriousness. And, he added, handing a mug to Y/N, you'll have a new bodyguard squad. The basketball team owes me about 1 million favors. You won't walk to class alone until this is sorted. Y/N took the mug, the warmth seeping into her icy fingers. She looked from Jimin's kind face to JUNGKOOK's determined one. The reality of their reckless, total kindness overwhelmed her. A tear spilled over and traced a path down her cheek. Why are you doing all this? She asked, her voice breaking. We're not even friends. We're rivals. JUNGKOOK reached out and carefully wiped the tear away with his thumb. His touch was unbearably gentle. Because you're my rival, he said softly, his eyes holding hers. And rivals look out for each other. He stood up, patting her head once. Now get some sleep. We have that 20-page economics paper on trade deficits due in 10 days, and I plan to get a better grade than you. For the first time that night, a real shaky smile touched Y/N's lips. She was safe. She was free. And her infuriating, wonderful rival had just turned her entire world upside down to save it. 2 weeks had passed. In JUNGKOOK's dorm room, a new peaceful routine had settled. Textbooks and highlighters were spread across the floor. Y/N was curled in the desk chair, frowning at her laptop. JUNGKOOK was on the floor, leaning against his bed. Your thesis statement is weak, Y/N declared, not looking up. It's too broad. Globalization has mixed effects. That's not a thesis, that's a headline. JUNGKOOK didn't glance up from his own notes. Your supporting evidence in Section 3 is weaker. You're citing a source from 2005. The data is ancient. From his bed, where he was supposed to be napping, Jimin let out a long-suffering sigh. You two realize this isn't normal flirting, right? Most people say your hair looks nice, or I like your smile. Not your bibliographic formatting is inconsistent. An eraser flew from Y/N's direction. Another launched from Jungkook's. They hit Jimin in the chest and shoulder simultaneously. Ow! Fine. Be weird. Jimin laughed, rolling over and putting a pillow over his head. Later, when Jimin had gone to the gym, the room grew quiet. Y/N closed her laptop. The counseling center, she said softly, helped me file the official restraining order yesterday. It went through. He can't come near campus or my registered address. She looked at Jungkook, her expression full of a gratitude too big for words. Thank you. For everything. Jungkook kept his eyes on his book, a faint pink tinge on his ears. Don't thank me yet, he said, his voice purposely light. I still plan to beat your score on the economics final. By at least 5 points. Y/N's smile was real this time. In your dreams, John. It was a rainy Thursday night. Jimin was out. The only sounds were the gentle tap-tap of rain against the window and the low hum of the heater. They were squeezed together on the small dorm couch, a shared blanket over their legs, supposedly watching a documentary about the stock market. You never told me, Y/N said quietly, breaking the comfortable silence. Why you really helped me. The real reason. Jungkook stared at the screen where numbers flickered. Yes, I did. Rivalry. I told you. Can't have my competition being distracted. Liar, she whispered. He didn't deny it this time. A long charged silence stretched between them, filled only by the rain. Remember our first debate? Jungkook asked suddenly, his voice low. Freshman year. The environmental economics seminar. Y/N groaned softly at the memory. You destroyed my argument about subsidizing renewable energy. You said my proposal was financially naive and operationally juvenile. I had that phrase memorized for weeks. You cried afterward, Jungkook said. She jerked her head to look at him. I did not. He finally turned to face her. In the dim light from the TV, his smile was soft, nothing like his usual smirk. You did. In the women's bathroom on the 3rd floor of the economics building. I know because I waited outside the door for almost an hour, trying to get the courage to apologize. Y/N stared at him, stunned. She remembered that empty hallway, the hum of the fluorescent lights, her own quiet tears of frustration. She never knew. You waited. I did, he nodded. His gaze was intense, seeing only her. And you never came out. You must have slipped out another door. That's when I knew. Her heart was beating so loudly she was sure he could hear it. Knew what? Jungkook leaned closer, slowly closing the space between them on the small couch. His voice was a rough whisper. That I never ever wanted to make you cry again. Their faces were inches apart. His eyes dropped to her lips. Y/N's breath caught. The world shrank to the space between them, to the warmth of his hand as it came up to cradle her cheek. The door burst open with a dramatic bang. Pizza's here. Jimin cheered, holding up 2 large boxes. He took in the scene, their close proximity, the frozen moment. His eyes went wide. Oh, sorry. Spectacularly bad timing. Jungkook let his forehead fall against Y/N's shoulder with a soft groan of frustration as she hid her burning face in her hands, laughing nervously. A few days later, as Y/N and Jungkook walked through the university parking lot after a study group, a familiar harsh voice rang out. Y/N. Her father stepped out from between 2 cars. His face was twisted with anger. Enough of this nonsense. You're coming home. Now. For a moment old fear gripped her. But then she felt Jungkook's hand, a steadying presence on her lower back. She straightened her shoulders and took a small step forward. No, she said, her voice clear and firm in the open air. I'm not. He began to advance, his hand rising. You ungrateful. Before he could take another step, there was a sudden movement. 5 very tall, very broad members of the university basketball team seemed to materialize from nowhere. forming a silent, imposing wall behind Jungkook and Y/N. Jimin stood at the front, his usual smile gone. Jungkook didn't move. He spoke calmly, as if stating a fact. The restraining order says you must remain 500 feet away, sir. You're currently at about 50. He held up his phone. The campus police were alerted the moment you stepped onto university property. They're already on their way. Y/N's father looked from the determined faces of the athletes to Jungkook's cold, unflinching gaze to his daughter, who was no longer trembling but standing tall. He took a stumbling step back, his bluster deflating. "You'll regret this," he spat, the words weak now. He turned and hurried away, disappearing between the rows of cars. Y/N watched him go, a weight she'd carried for years lifting from her chest. She let out a long, slow breath. "I don't think I will," she said, more to herself than anyone. The end-of-semester award ceremony was held in the Grand Hall. Y/N sat in the front row, wearing a simple dress she'd bought with her first paycheck from her new, single on-campus job. Jungkook sat beside her, fidgeting with his tie. And now, the dean announced, for the highest GPA in the economics department. He opened the envelope, smiled, and looked up. "It's a tie. Please congratulate John Jungkook and Kong Y/N." The audience erupted in applause. They walked up the steps together side by side. As the dean handed them each a plaque, he offered Jungkook the microphone for a few words. Jungkook took it, looked out at the crowd, then directly at Y/N. "Actually, Dean," he said, his voice echoing in the suddenly quiet hall, "she should get the solo award." He turned to fully face her. She achieved this while working 3 jobs. While surviving. She did it after escaping an abusive household and building a new life with incredible courage. His voice wavered with emotion. "She's the strongest person I know. This is hers." The applause this time was thunderous, a wave of respect and support. Y/N's eyes filled with tears. The dean touched, offered her the microphone. She took it, her gaze locked on Jungkook. "And he," she said, her voice strong and clear, "achieved this while secretly planning a rescue mission for his academic rival, while giving up his space, his peace, and his privacy to offer someone a safe harbor." She smiled through her tears. "So I think we share this. We're better together." Backstage afterward, in the quiet chaos, she found him. "You didn't have to say all that," she whispered, holding her plaque to her chest. "Yes, I did," Jungkook said, taking her free hand. "Because I don't want to be your rival anymore." Her heart gave a painful squeeze. "Oh," she breathed, misunderstanding. He shook his head quickly, stepping closer. "No, not like that. I mean, I want to be the person who holds your hand during award ceremonies." He laced his fingers through hers. "And reminds you to eat when you're studying too hard. And argues with you about fiscal policy at 2 a.m., just to hear the passion in your voice." He brought her hand to his lips and pressed a soft kiss to her knuckles. "I want to be that. For you." The tears spilled over, but her smile was brighter than any stage light. "That sounds," she whispered, "so much better than being rivals." "Good," he murmured. This time there was no interruption. He leaned in and she met him halfway. The kiss was gentle, a soft seal on a promise, a silent conversation that had finally found its words. From the wings, Jimin, Jenny, and the entire basketball team erupted into quiet cheers and whistles. 2 former rivals stood wrapped in each other's arms, their plaques forgotten at their feet. They had found in each other not just competition but understanding, not just challenge but sanctuary. They had found against all odds a home.